This is Beyond a Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Gary Smith.
GPS, how are you? I love the sweatshirt. Oh, yeah.
I'm wearing the t-shirt.
Actually, it's a t-shirt.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm in the sweatshirt here because it's so cold, but
it has been unseasonably cold in the office lately. I will say that. That is
I don't know what's going on, but
I'm running 2 space heaters with the door closed, and that seems to do the trick, but it's a little chilly down there.
Yeah, but it's gotten chilly. I mean, this morning it was chilly as could be. Do we have a? You're back in. I'm back in. You never actually left, but I will tell you that it's heartening, I guess, is the best way to put it. Some of the reactions and the coming together of the community. I saw that LA Mag was doing a pop-up, as we do this on Saturday. They were doing a pop-up this morning, and there's people, they've been the intrepid reporters telling some pretty great stories about things. There was one story in particular that I thought was kind of amazing, which was a story about, you see this, Michelle wrote it, about the 14 crosses and the fire captain or fire official who
you're talking
the church.
Yeah, you're talking about the church in the Pacific Palisades where virtually the entire church burned, but the Station of the Cross stained glass all remained. And the fire captain is going around. There's a TV interview that I believe Michelle linked in her story where he's just going around just marveling at the fact that by every measure, this should have been the first to go. This glass should have exploded, but for some reason they all remain. And the only part of the structure that remains is sort of the portion that houses these 12 Stations of the Cross. And you might be right. I think there might be 14 pieces of glass, but it is the Stations of the Cross, I believe, that they're depicting. Is that your understanding?
That was my understanding, and really, where the fire official was, I wish I had his name here. Maybe you'll find it while I'm talking, but he was talking about, given the heat of the fire and comparing it to an oven, that the glass should have melted, but instead it was like everything around the stained glass, this beautiful stained glass, had been incinerated and the glass remained, which...
Yeah, it is. I'm sorry. It is 14 Stations of the Cross. You are correct. His name is LAFD Captain Frank Lima, and this is the Corpus Christi Church in the Pacific Palisades, Corpus Christi Catholic Church. And I'll pull up one of the images here and show it to our audience. It's really sort of remarkable how just really the devastation of every part of the structure, but yet you see here that sorry, I jumped the gun. You see here the walls that house these small, I would say they look about 6 feet tall, 2 feet, 3 feet wide Stations of the Cross, this intricate stained glass made up of many different pieces in each one. I'll try to zoom in here a little bit so you can see that they're mosaics of several different pieces of stained glass that are all intricately fit together, and they all still remain. And it's just pretty remarkable. It
is remarkable. And then I believe, some of that was in the Palisades, and then Melina, the editor at Pasadena, was talking about the synagogue that in Altadena, and I had been there as a kid, the Zorthian Ranch, which was impacted greatly in Altadena. The kind of I don't know if it's a joke or what you want to say, but kind of the demarcation between Altadena and La Cañada is the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. And we kept saying that the proverbial, they will never let Jet Propulsion Laboratory, JPL, burn or get impacted because of the kind of storied history and the way that it's indelibly imprinted in the fabric of our entire space program.
Yeah, and luckily, I don't believe they did sustain any serious damage, but that was certainly something that I was concerned about because, I mean, if you get damage there, I mean, not only the history, but the damage to the potential future of the space program and just the cutting edge technologies that are there. I mean, that would have been not that we didn't suffer just devastating and catastrophic losses, but that would have been just a further paper cut to add to the 1,000 we've already suffered.
So, one of the things that piqued my interest yesterday, shows you that maybe I need a better hobby, is I was watching C-SPAN, and I believe it was from January 10th, was the audio of the oral argument at the U.S. Supreme Court about TikTok and the TikTok ban. And the advocate who was on behalf of TikTok, I believe, was Noel Christopher, who's a former Solicitor General, I think now at Jones Day. And I did not know that before I listened to the oral argument. As I listened to the oral argument, I was mightily impressed with his ability to kind of distill down the argument in a way that was instantly accessible. But I think he was on the receiving end of a unanimous decision by the Supreme Court upholding the ban, which I think came out on Friday or Thursday, and it was unanimous.
I believe it was. Yeah, I believe it was either Thursday or Friday. The 17th was Friday. I think it was either late Thursday or early Friday. And yes, they unanimously voted to uphold the ban. The ban goes into effect on Sunday, the 19th, which is today as you listen. And I believe that on Friday afternoon or evening, TikTok put out a statement basically saying that they weren't going to wait for Sunday and that they were going to shut down their operation in the U.S. starting on Saturday afternoon or evening. Did you hear that as well?
I heard that as well. I've heard that there is a plea to Biden to basically press pause until Trump can take office. I've heard that, as you may or may not know, Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank has been making the rounds talking about the syndicate that he's got. I remember a while ago, I haven't followed up on it, but Steve Mnuchin, who was the former Treasury Secretary under Trump, had also had a syndicate that was talking about buying it. From the legal standpoint, to read the opinion and then go back and listen to the oral argument, it really was, and you always have the benefit of the 2020 hindsight, but the interesting thing was I kind of started with Kavanaugh engaging with Noel Christopher. You then listen to Amy Coney Barrett, who was building on that, and then listen to Ketanji Brown building on all of that. You could see where they were the kind of building blocks, and I had missed the Gorsuch part, and I will go back and listen to that because it was apparent to me that at least in the oral arguments, what they were trying to do from TikTok was separate out the idea of, well, this is a backdoor entry by China into manipulating the algorithm. And instead, they were saying, no, this is a content issue, and that you have to apply the strict scrutiny of the constitutional standard whenever you're dealing with free speech. It was a fascinating kind of a tension between national security and those concerns, and then free speech, and how do you reconcile those? And they did it. The court did it unanimously, which I thought was interesting to some degree, and kind of punted it back to the executive branch to see what they want to do, because there is that idea that one of the things that they had said, ByteDance is apparently, BYTE, is apparently the parent company who controls the kind of the guts of how the content gets distributed. And one of the lines of oral argument was, well, aren't you really just saying you don't want to substitute in a different guts to this for the content moderation or the content rollout, so to speak? Did you get that?
I did. Yeah, ByteDance is the China parent company that is behind TikTok. TikTok, when this all first started in the first Trump administration, they split off their operations, and now they have TikTok as a U.S. subsidiary. But to the point of the content providing and the way that it's done. I think something that lawmakers, maybe not the Supreme Court necessarily, but lawmakers were concerned about is the fact that the way that the algorithm works in America is very different from the way that it works in China. There are restrictions on during what hours certain age groups are allowed to use TikTok. They put limits on that so that kids aren't staying up all night watching TikTok. They are prioritizing different kinds of content in America as they do in China. They put a strong emphasis on STEM and learning type of information for consumers in China, whereas that is certainly not necessarily an emphasized thing here in America. And, you point out that the Supreme Court ended up coming down on it unanimously. If you go back a year or so when this was being debated in Congress and in the Senate, there were closed door informational hearings for congressmen and senators when they were talking about this, under national security concerns. And they were given a lot of information that was done in privacy and not available to the public. And then they came out and they also unanimously voted for this law that is ultimately being debated now in the Supreme Court. So while it's hard for us and possibly impossible for us to ever really know what it is those lawmakers heard, I think that a careful observer would have to really keep an eye out for something that gets everyone on both sides of the aisle all on the same page. And I think that's something that we need to be concerned with.
That was, in fact, I read an article today or yesterday that said it was a bipartisan deal, but now nobody wants to own it, which I thought was interesting because the old expression, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah. And I, full disclosure here, I have a close family member, one of my closest family members owns a business that is basically 80 to 85% reliant on TikTok as a means of advertising and sales. They promote their business on there, and they do a lot of their selling direct through the TikTok store, or having TikTok lead to their personal website. And so I do have a bit of a stake in this. I'm not personally a TikTok user. I think I am possibly. I was going to say I'm a little older than the average demographic, but looking around my peer group, most of my contemporaries are certainly using TikTok. I think the privacy and security concerns have been around for quite a long time, and I just decided early on that I have enough social media and don't need another one. So I'm not personally going to be impacted, but I will be in terms of my family member who's got a small business that's supporting him and his two daughters. If they take an 85% hit, I don't think there's really any business in the country that can take an 85% hit and hope to keep going as usual. So it's an interesting, I hate to feed conspiracy theories, but there was a push by TikTok towards the end of last year, a month ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, to try to eat up market share of Amazon. And that was, if you talk to the people who are operating the TikTok shops, part of what they were talking about was they were going to do kinds of loss leader things going into the quarter four in order to take some market share away from Amazon. And we now know, fast forward on Monday, the inauguration, and you've got the various people who are principals of the major competitors. And so it's interesting. Yeah, basically every large tech platform besides TikTok is going to have their chief executive represented there at the inauguration. At least those are the reports. I guess the
report is that TikTok's going to have either their head or their second in command there.
Yes, and there is also, full disclosure, certainly a very large Trump donor who is a significant investor in TikTok. So that has been bandied about as part of why Trump has changed his opinion on this from his last administration to this current one. But I guess we'll see who all can get seats, because apparently from what I've read, they're going to, for the first time since, is it Reagan or possibly Nixon, they're going to move it.
I think they were banning about 40 years, but yeah. Interesting to see.
That they're going to move the inauguration into the Capitol Rotunda. Sorry for anyone who hasn't heard that story. Mark and I obviously have, so he jumped in there to finish my thought. But yes, they're moving the inauguration into the Capitol Rotunda for the first time in 40 years, and we'll see what's going to happen in terms of the parade. And I, as a sports fan who had his team's game moved from one night to another this week, I feel for the people who have made plans to travel there and now maybe find themselves quite literally out in the cold. So hopefully for anyone who's who's in that predicament, they can figure something out, because that would be a bit of a bummer to spend a whole bunch of money only to find yourself unable to attend the event you were planning to go to.
Well, I'm very anxious to see what happens as this drops. We may be dated. We'll see how it ages.
Yes, we will.
I suspect if they go dark, which they said they will, then it will only be for a very short period of time.
I was talking to somebody about that recently who was looking at me like I was a lunatic, but I was telling this person that if TikTok was going to go dark, that I think you would be looking at less than 100 hours. I do not think that it is going to be a long-term thing. I do think that there will be, a lot to happen in the world of TikTok in the next 100 days, but I do not see it going dark for more than 100 hours. I think that ultimately there's going to be some sort of a concession made. And I think that Trump is probably going to see this as a chance for him to make a business deal, which is his favorite thing to do, and try to play to the constituency that helped get him elected, and find a way to, whether it's divesting or selling or whatever the machination is. But I think that he'll find a way to put it back up while he tries to figure out a solution. So yeah, we'll see how this ages. I can tell you one thing that's going to age pretty well there, Garagos. We're going to have a midweek.
Oh yeah, we're having a midweek for all.
And by the way, come at me, because I already have it in the can. So, you say what you will, you can bandy about with your conspiracy theories. I have it ready to go. So come at me Thursday morning. You'll see a midweek. At me if you want. God.
Love it. People. Thank you, Gary.
Hey, Mark, can I shout one more thing out?
Sure.
So Los Angeles Magazine, a lot of great reporting going on there. We're obviously in the middle of these historic and devastating fires, but I want to shout out an article that a friend of mine, a contributor, wrote. His name is Dimitri Pappas, and he is a very talented comedy writer. And he has been in an area that's been affected by the fires. He had a lot of friends and family members that have been affected by the fires. And he's been a little bit overwhelmed with some of the contrast in his local community and seeing what's happening to people he knows and loves that are on the ground, and then going to social media and seeing the way that people are reacting to it there. And he took his comedy chops and his writing chops and wrote a very, very clever, thoughtful article, working in a lot of, characters and people from popular culture and TV and films. And he used it as a tool to sort of give people time to think about the change in discourse between the reality of people who are on the ground and those people who are looking to score points on social media. So I would encourage everyone to go to lamag.com and check out that article. It is an opinion piece, and it is titled "The Erosion of Empathy: How Fake News and Conspiracies Divide Us." So I would encourage everyone to check that out, lamag.com.
I didn't know the connection. Thank you. I'm the last guy to know, but by the way, I retweeted that yesterday because I was fascinated by the article. It was very well done.
Yeah, he was doing a podcast for LA Mag for a while, and he's he wrote this not looking for it to be published anywhere. He was sort of writing it as a cathartic tool to just help him get through kind of the grief that he's been dealing with in his community. And he sent it to a friend who sent it to a friend who sent it to me, and ultimately we sent it around to a few people and decided that this was something that needed to be distributed and published. That was never really his intention, but now it has been. So I would encourage everyone to go check that out and read it. I'll put a link in the YouTube description for anyone who doesn't want to try to search for it. I'll put a link for you right there.
Perfect. Thanks, Gary. Thanks for that.
Yeah, no problem, Mark. Thank you for making the time on this Sunday and for making the time for the midweek.
I'll see you midweek.
Yeah, you haters. We'll see you Thursday.
Thanks, Gary.
Thanks, Mark. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Reasonable Doubt. Subscribe on YouTube at youtube.com/Reasonable Doubt Podcast.